good afternoon, English conferees, and you're welcome to the monthly webinar, the Rule of Law Development Foundation. And you agree with us last month, we had a very top provisions of the Finance Act. Very topical issue of insecurity. Present day, we're asking the question whether it is structuring our dear nation and how it does here the coordinator to publicly first introduce the coordinator of today's program, no other person than JB Dowd, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who is our coordinator. Please let us give him a round of applause. He will be coordinating on our behalf, and we have our keynote speaker is somebody who all are very, very much aware of. No other person than Sir, you're very welcome. He's a very renowned legal on issues of security, and he's the chairman of the Apex Safety and Security Consultants Abuja. I also know him as the founder. We also know him, sorry for the interruption. We also know him as a former director of the Department of State. Sir, you're very good. Let's give the former director is with us here, so you know the topic is well covered. And to the right of the coordinator, we have Mr. Maji Kiru, who is a familiar face of media. So we do see your work. You are definitely who always speaks for the conscience of the nation, and we are aware that you are syndicated with several newspapers. In fact, too much for me. But sir, we'll be looking forward to your round of applause. You can see that you are in capable hands. We are going to have a very topical decision discussion on this issue of security. So, Mr. Chairman, I hand over to you, please.
Distinguished guest speakers, let me just correct Paul. There are two speakers in parallel and discussing various aspects of the topic. Participants, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, I go straight to my brief introductory introduction. In 1999, when Nigeria transited, presumably from military rule to civilian democratic dispensation, based on the American presidential model, the nation was relatively peaceful. Borders were secure, rural communities were in harmony, debilitating crimes such as kidnapping, cattle rustling, etc. were few and far between. The nation's financial balance sheet was in black. The words impunity security could not be considered at that time as part of Nigeria's legacy or stock in trade. Today, the story is different. With apologies to the Chino Achepe, it's as if things are falling apart and the center cannot. The essence of these opening remarks is not to lament this nation. It is to lay foundation for the consideration of the cause, effect, and solutions to the twin problems of impunity and insecurity currently bedeviling Nigeria by two, which we consider two of the brightest minds on the subject under review. Corruption as a factor. It is true that Nigeria is endemically corrupt. What has endorsed such disrepute emanates from several factors that time and space will not allow us to dwell into. Suffice, however, to say that the quest to acquire wealth by any means and by a large percentage of the population and the loss of values in society of probity, accountability, integrity, love of neighbor, and above all, the fear of God Almighty have remotely and directly led to the collapse of the political and economic space by the twin debilitations of impunity. The topic at hand. In the past 2 years, criminal activities such as kidnapping, abduction, ransom collection, banditry, armed robbery, target killings, cattle rustling, terrorism, invasion, and destruction of the agricultural produce and farmland by herdsmen, political instability, occupation of large tracts of geographical space by malevolent bandits operating outside the laws of the Federation, drug addiction, etc., have been rife and rampant in Nigeria. The state, which is administered by in power, is mandated by the provision of Section 14, subsection 2B of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, thus, people shall be proposed. The litany of significant loss of lives and damage to property is beyond the scale of losses in countries where full-blown war is raging. The truth is that government has not played its anticipated constitutional role in providing security and welfare to her citizens. This webinar seeks in the main to examine the genesis of impunity and insecurity, emphasis on the latter, the magnitude and or extent of the numerous challenges, its impact on the socio-economic and political well-being of this great nation, and the failure of the security agencies to contain these incidents of insecurity. Another important aspect of this discourse is apparent when insecurity in the nation is juxtaposed with the cascading and by most of the ethnic nationalities and political actors for restructuring of the administrative and political landscape of Nigeria in one form or the other. The beating of the drums of war exemplified by frequent communal and ethnic clashes, acts of challenge to government, such as food blockage of staple foods from the northern part of Nigeria to the southern part, carried out recently at Jeba in Kwara State, which led to economic losses estimated at about 4 billion. And other criminal acts have led analysts to forecast that these debilitating factors and actions are not arrested forthwith. Then the Nigeria as we know it today may cease to exist as the various competing groups may disintegrate the nation or fragment it or lead to an answering of the prayer of the advocates of whether it is confederation, regionalization, or true fiscal freezing for Nigeria. Therefore, a continuous need for a discussion among all well-meaning Nigerians for an understanding of the causes and solution of and to these twin calamities of impunity and insecurity currently ravaging our land. Our speakers are Mike and Mr. Majid Dairu, tested patriots and nationalists who have served this nation in numerous capacities, as well as their biodata will reveal shortly. Mike Ejiofor, who is claimed not being a chief, is an old friend of mine. He's a legal practitioner of vast experience. He is a security expert and consultant, and presently is chairman CEO of Apex Safety and Security Consultants Abuja. He retired from the Department of State Services as director and has been engaged in safety and security consultancy since his retirement from public service. He is affiliated to too many international and local security agencies and organizations. His remit here is to engage the audience with the technical aspects of insecurity, particularly the things and spread of the crimes of kidnapping, bandit, abduction, and ransom payment, and similar offenses. Currently pose a grave threat to unity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is expected to provide solutions to these existential problems. Mr. Majid Dairu, BSc, Kogi State University, 2008, newspaper columnist, Daily Sun, Premium Times, and the National Pilot newspapers, media advisor at the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, and currently team lead technical committee of the Lux Terra Leadership Foundation Network and Advocacy Group. He is a celebrated journalist and public policy analyst. His remit at this webinar is to deal with the political and economic reasons, the slide of Nigeria into the described crimes, and also to engage the issue whether impunity and insecurity in those ways they have reared their heads or manifested themselves will not unwittingly lead to a fragmentation of Nigeria, or at the very worst, if we escape like bring about the much sought after restructuring of the country into regions, having greater autonomy over their affairs, or a strong financially independent nation with manageable units of not more than states, autonomously forged together, practicing truth and grace. Mr. Dairu will interrogate specific devastating events such as Chibok, Dapchi, Kagara, Jangebe, and other abductions of secondary school children nationwide, including the recent ones, such as the Federal College of Forestry of Kaduna and Government Science Secondary School, with a view to discovering why these incidences are growing. Some say it's because too much ransom money is in their hands and they cannot resist making more money. So this is a remedy. It will affect their effect on the stability and unity of Nigeria as a nation state. In other words, how long can Nigeria withstand all this stress before it snaps? I just note that both speakers will crisscross these issues as they will or desire. The rules of engagement. which is how we will go on today. Dio Volente, which is God willing. The webinar having commenced exactly at 2 p.m. on the dot. And the opening remarks almost concluded. We shall go to the meat of the whole event, which is that the guest speakers, starting with Mr. Ejefo, will make their presentations for a period of 45 minutes. Please, Paul, because we are time constrained on the internet, you are the timekeeper, just nudge them at intervals, maybe 2 minutes, then 2 minutes, time up. And we will have a few interventions. That's 5 minutes each. And a few interventions will be permitted with preference given to those that are participating online. It is said that those here will not express their views, but the ball will be in Paul's court, and he will be able to decide those who will speak. Thereafter, make very short closing remarks and thank those who have this word dinner at that point in time a well-deserved group. God willing, we hope to see you all at the next wave, where hopefully we will explore the pros and cons of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill and its anticipated impact on the Nigerian electoral system come 2023. I therefore wish at this juncture all participants a thought-provoking, exciting afternoon. I call on Mr. Jofo to make his presentation without wasting time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, Coordinator, I want to especially thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and make presentation. After your opening remarks, I felt there was nothing for me to present again because you have virtually x-rayed the challenges and virtually provided some solutions. However, we have come, and I will try my own little way to make my contribution. I just want to start that every country has its own security challenges. They're not peculiar to Nigeria. Every country, but the problem is, how do you handle your own problems or challenges, especially security challenges? So I'll start by saying since 2008, issues bordering on insecurity have been the topic of almost every formal and informal discourse in Nigeria. His abstract in a paper titled Insecurity in Nigeria, Political, Religious, and Cultural Implications, Udo Emmanuel Williams, a PhD student at the University of Calabar, Cross River State, captured it thus. Insecurity, apart from being the fear of every Nigerian, become the word on the lips of every Nigerian and a discussion topic where 2 or 3 Nigerians gather. Several illegal armed groups, ethnic militia groups, religious fundamentalists and fanatics are evidence of insecurity in Nigeria. These have given birth to a series of bombings, murder, arson, armed robbery, corruption, injustices that we hear every day. It is clear that these happenings are negatively affecting Nigeria politically, religiously, and culturally. Religious organizations and other humanitarian agencies are losing confidence on the law enforcement agency. End of quote. The picture of insecurity evident in today's Nigeria looks gloomy, especially when juxtaposed with the impunity of the perpetrators. This ranges from faceless Boko Haram terrorist elements to marauding, blood-sucking Fulani militia. I call them militia. I don't call them herdsmen because we are coexisting with the herdsmen. Invading merciless bandits, confident armed robbers capable of engaging banks for hours despite security fortification. Daredevil smugglers that can break through any Nigerian border security measure. Ritualists snuffing lives out of unsuspecting persons for power or wealth. Advanced field fraud, Yahoo boys, political gangsterism orchestrated by culpable politicians and the foot soldiers under their employ. Sectarian and regional violent youth groups, amongst many others. I need not remind you nor bore you with the story of my own kidnap. Since then, my slogan when I appear on TV, those days I say, don't pay ransom, because if you pay ransom, you encourage the kidnappers. But after my appearance, I discovered that at the time, Section 14(2)(b) of our Constitution is put on hold. Because if you fail to pay, just pray that you don't have a relation who is a victim of kidnap. You do everything to ensure a safe release of such person. As gloomy and disillusioning as this appears, it is a sad reality. Some of us simply put up bold faces. This is our country. We want to defend it. We can't. We don't put bold faces on television. Say, yes, Nigeria is our country. I must live up to our responsibilities. I speak from the point of experience, having been a lucky victim. All thanks to God, because the experience is better imagined. Some others did not enjoy such grace as I did, because they were killed in the process, even after payment of ransom. Despite the trauma, I could still picture the impunity, the confidence, and organizational competence displayed by my captors. At this point, I need to remind you that the Fulani militia operating everywhere, they don't operate alone. I've said this in times without number, and I've drawn the attention of the government, because some of them are working in concert with some of our security agents. With the foregoing in focus, my presentation will examine the following. I have conceptualization, the Nigerian nation, general overview of insecurity in the country. How did we get here? What next? Recommendations and conclusion. I wouldn't want to bore you with the conceptualization, because I'll still leave the paper with you. Now to Nigerian nation. Nigeria is a product of 1914 amalgamation of the Northern and Southern protectorates by Sir Lord Lugard, apparently for the convenience of the British colonial masters. It is a multicultural, multi-religious, and completely heterogeneous society, which must be seen as such and accorded the associated nuances. The nation had gone through harrowing political, religious, and ethnic crises, especially in the post-independence era. These crises, including the Civil War, have resulted in losses running to millions of lives and unquantifiable worth of property. Notwithstanding the traumatic journey, insecurity was within manageable limits, just like the chairman said at the beginning. It was manageable as at that point. One of the commonest undoing of the country is weak leadership, coupled with impunity in crime, tribalism, religious intolerance, and official corruption. All of these, amongst others, have stiffened her political and socio-economic growth. To this end, the country's Contemporaries like Malaysia, Pakistan, India, and even Ghana, amongst others, have dwarfed her, such that while some of them are nuclear powers, Nigeria is still struggling to feed its citizens and grapple with little domestic security challenges. The complexities of Nigeria and her seeming intractable problems born out of self-deceit and lack of patriotism and political will could be gleaned from public reactions, both within and without. The pessimistic views and derogatory expressions of Nigerians about Nigeria are alarming. All of these are born out of frustrations occasioned by daily unveiling hopeless tomorrow, exacerbated by today's security crisis, and which of course determines the prosperity or otherwise of any nation. However, despite the country's diversity, I am a strong proponent of a united in diversity peaceful Nigeria because I perceive greatness achievable only in an environment of equity, justice, and patriotism. Now, the general overview of insecurity in the country. From the pre-Nigerian Civil War till about late 90s, Nigeria could be adjudged relatively peaceful. Apart from the fears of bad roads, armed robbery on the highways, as well as AK-47 wielding men of the Nigeria police, I'm talking of Nigeria police now, occasionally extorting money from commuters, one could travel the length and breadth of Nigeria without any fear of attack by AK-47 carrying killers emerging from the bushes. You now see the difference, the distinction. We used to witness the police carrying AK-47 extorting money from the people, which was a lesser evil for us. But now, bandits carrying AK-47 and destroying the whole of the society. Then, despite the age-long shortcomings of our police, they could talk tough and mean it, as well as back and equally bite criminals. The impunity of today's criminality readily provokes a reminiscence of the reign of terror by notorious armed robbers like Oyenusi in the 70s in Western Nigeria and Lawrence Anini of Old Bender State in the 80s. Though these criminal gangs held sway with impunity for a reasonable period of time with the usual complicity of the police, they and other insurrections that emerged here and there were quickly crushed before they became harder. I remember the head of state, the military president then, asking the Inspector General of Police, where is Anini, and gave a marching order that this should be brought to an end. And in fact, it was brought to an end. In the 60s, the country was faced with post-independence compromises and alignments to accommodate her diversities. Some of the inherent security threats include political crisis, corruption, ethnic bickering, which lack of proper management of the nascent independence snowballed into a civil war. The 70s and 80s witnessed post-war consequences of proliferation of arms, armed robbery, continued sectarian ethnic animosity and crisis, religious conflicts, increased official corruption, political violence, military dictatorship, and its associated complications, civil strokes, students' unrest and agitations. In the 90s, there were increased political instability, electoral violence worsened by the annulment of 1993 election, believed to have been won by MP Abiola by General Ibrahim Babangida, armed robbery, regional agitations, religious crisis, sanctions by Western countries, introductory kidnapping in the Niger Delta region, and sectarian crisis. Between 2008, insecurity with impunity rather than abate progressed geometrically. Kidnapping in the Niger Delta region reached its crescendo and waned. The period bettered the worst security plague in the history of Nigeria. Boko Haram, whose sole agenda is to Islamize the country or at worst carve out an Islamic caliphate in the northeast Nigeria and end Western education. Also within this period,
While newer menacing threats such as kidnapping for ransom, banditry, invasion, and sacking of communities, 47 carrying Fulani militia have cattle mass protests against police brutality. Remember SARS? Nationwide looting of warehouses and vandalization of public to private sector properties. Ebola, you remember? COVID-19 pandemic emerged. Older ones like farmers, herders clashes, religious intolerance, official corruption, electoral violence, sectarian regional agitations, armed robbery, youth unrest, food insecurity, etc. increase with much speed. Presently, Nigerian highways are death traps. Accidents occasioned by bad roads, as have been the case, or by the threat of kidnappers. Boko Haram members, herdsmen, bandits, armed robbers, all of which are worse than bad roads. Nigerian homes are no longer places where one can retire to after busy work day, as gun carrying daredevil men who visit even started coming to Abuja. Schools, places of worship, and hospitals are longer sacrosanct or exempted from attacks by the invaders. Since 14 April 2014, after 276 students were kidnapped from government secondary Chibok in Borno State, the Boko Haram terrorist group, more schools have suffered the same fate. On 19 February 2018, 110 schoolgirls aged between 18 and 19 years old were abducted from Dapchi Girls Science Technical School, Dapchi, Yobe State, by gunmen. On 11 December 2020, over 300 schoolboys were kidnapped from Government Boys Secondary School, Kankara in Katsina State. On 7 February 2021, over 40 students with their teachers were abducted at Kagara, Niger State, by bandits. On 26 February, barely 9 days after the abduction of Kagara, Niger State, 317 girls were abducted from a government girls' secondary school in Jangebe, Zamfara State, by bandits. The list keeps rising daily and is not abating. Nigerians are abducted daily. Ransoms run into millions of naira and dollars are remitted to kidnappers, terrorists daily, thereby empowering them for better strategy and procurement of arms for more daring attacks. While many other victims are killed, are collecting ransom. Communities are sacked, while unlucky ones are killed. Farmers are can no longer enter the bushes to farm for fear of being attacked. Law-abiding and genuine herders now have no-go areas. Else, their cattle will be rustled. Innocent souls perish in the hands of criminals and will simply move on as if nothing is happening. Human lives do not appear to mean anything to us anymore. One fundamental feature of these key criminal elements of the present dispensation is the seeming defilement of all local therapies. This is not unconnected with the fact that they are more daring, more sophisticated, more diversified, having more religious, ethnic, and religious outlook, as well as having religious, ethnic, and regional international advocates and defenders. They also operate with witting and audacious impunity, as if they are authorities on their own. Their activities have resulted in an overtly divided Nigeria along ethnic and religious lines. Nigerians have lost interest and confidence in their leaders as well as in the country. Drums of war have been sounded from different regions of the country. One recurrent decimal in the evolution of these security threats is that they are never completely decimated and followed through. Rather, the criminals or perpetrators are dislodged, and as soon as relative calm returns to the areas, the government authorities retreat, while the criminal gangs regroup and return with more intensity and viciousness. We are now at a crossroad where undesirable elements have declared war on everything Nigeria. Education, use, religious be considered alien to their brand. According to Global Terrorism Index 2020, Nigeria is the tallest country with about 1,245 deaths in 2019. Nigeria is ranked alongside Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria, and in the midst of this, some misguided or mischievous Nigerians are meeting dialogue or amnesty for the criminal, even when they are unrepentant. But I ask, after the dialogue and possible downing of weapons, if ever, what happens to their victims' well-being, even those that were killed? This is a country where kidnappers, terrorists are paid, and the victims are not compensated. In my opinion, patronage of local vigilante groups, hunters, as well as formation of regional security outfit, seeming lone choice of amnesty or dialogue for unrepentant criminals who hold the state hostage for no genuine reasons or cause are evidences of failing and overwhelmed security system. How we got here? As earlier said, the country has been bedeviled by injustice, corruption, religious and ethnic bigotry, lack of patriotic leaders, foreign meddling. All of these primordial sentiments, among others, contributed to our inability as a people to confront emerging threats. Consciously, as well as unconsciously, we walked into the present security quagmire and now entangled. Some of the factors that brought us as a nation into this web are discussed below. 1. Government insensitivity and recklessness. Over the years, those in positions of leadership in Nigeria have not responded positively to the aspirations of those they lead. Rather, they engage in looting of public funds for self-aggrandizement and abandon their mandate to offer quality leadership and direction to the ordinary people. Such leadership actions and inactions have helped to create the root causes of insecurity that devil Nigeria today. 40 leadership selection process. In our 60 years of independence as a nation, we have had about 30 years of democracy thanks to the 21 years of uninterrupted civil rule from 1999. While the other years were by military men who were raised into dictatorial leadership, the years of democracy were equally not so fruitful due to faulty electoral processes, which produced most of whom were either very corrupt and cannot provide sane leadership, or persons not groomed and ready for it, or further still, persons outrightly unfit for the positions they occupied. 3. Centralized security structure. The security structure operating in the country is too centralized and incapable of comprehensively meeting the security needs of the hinterland. 4. Ill-prepared security agencies. This is all-encompassing and involves ill-equipped agencies, ill-trained personnel, poorly remunerated, highly compromised, and corrupt security enforcement agents. Corruption. The corruption in the system is spoken of both within and outside the country. The establishment of financial crime agencies has not tamed this monster enough because even its operatives are equally not absolved from traits of corruption, compromises, or political witch hunt. We see a situation where they begin to use the agencies for political will to settle political differences. Official corruption is one of the factors that brought Nigeria to its knees. Lack of strong institutions. Nigeria has traditionally lost her values in the same vein. Build stronger individuals than institutions. Consequently, rather than collapse those individuals, institutions are collapsed. The reverse is the case. This has led to policy somersaults as national issues revolve around each contemporary strongman's whims and caprices. You know, when the present administration came in, we were talking of body language. He's a strong man. Nobody's talking of body language anymore. Religious and poverty. A corrupt system like ours with weak leaders can only but produce unproductive and poor. No wonder Nigeria is credited with the poverty capital of the world. Religious and ethnic divide. Sometimes we appear to deceive ourselves in Nigeria, and this is one of the reasons why things are not working, because we claim to be on top of the situation. Ask any of the secretaries, we are on top of the situation. Why in reality we are drowning. It is irreligious and sinful to claim that Nigeria is not polarized along religious and ethnic biases, because the evidence are found everywhere, both in the formal and informal sectors, governments and its agencies. Poor funding for the security sector. Funding for the security sector has been abysmally very poor. The personnel are poorly remunerated and mobilized. From such a people, not much can be achieved. Misapplication and mishandling of military operation. Areas that require outright military onslaught are either ignored or handled with kid gloves, while areas with less threatening situations are visited with kinetic approaches. That reminds me of Senator Sani's policy of treating cases with deodorant and insecticides. For the criminal justice system, every breach of the law is expected to attract a punishment in line with the laws governing that society to serve as deterrence to would-be offenders. However, due to certain factors like corruption, lack of political will, lack of patriotism, biases, etc., justice has been miscarried, and those who deserve sanctions are rewarded, while those who deserve commendation receive the hammer. This encourages impunity and increased insecurity. Activities of fifth columnists. Rightly or wrongly, activities of fifth columnists both within and outside the country who do not want this country's greatness to manifest arrive. A former chief of defense staff, late Alex Vade, during his valedictory ceremony from the Nigerian Armed Forces, accused fifth columnists for the failure of the military. According to him, and I quote, the activities of fifth columnists in the military and other security agencies who leaked operational plans and other sensitive military information to the terrorists combined to make the fight against the insurgents particularly tough. The immediate past chief of Army Staff also told us that the war that has been won will last for another 20 years. What next? A rhetorical question crafted within this topic of discussion is expected to agitate the minds of every thinking Nigerian. Having been caught up in this reality, should we as a people fold our hands and allow fate to take its course, or formalize the fragmentation that we fought a near 3-year civil war to resist, or should we do everything within our powers to stop the agitation and avoid both the fragmentation and shedding of blood? The subtopic is a direct offshoot of the reference question. Why say neither no to this all-important question that suggests if insecurity and impunity is an unwilling prelude to restructuring and fragmentation? I wish to state that the indicators are loud and clear to every Nigerian, except those still living in self-denial and delusion. However, swings will largely depend on those managing affairs of the nation. A closer look at the unfolding area and the consequent regional and ethnic responses indicates a country that is at war with itself, but seems oblivious of due to extenuating factors and or selfish primordial sentiments of the major actors. Otherwise, the handwriting is clearly revealed that danger is lurking by the corner and will engulf everyone unless we act fast. Additionally, considering the fact that impunity has been indicated as the flammable component that gives impetus to the criminal activities that result in insecurity and which tend to suggest to criminals to go ahead, we are behind you. The country must at this stage admit its helplessness and return to the drawing board in sincerity. I believe that we have two categories of criminals. The first comprising of the pathological, that is the ideological criminals. The criminality is their life, while the second are the circumstantial ones who are into crime through association, harrowing life experiences. The former are unrepentant and audacious, while the latter are not and cannot walk out of crime through law enforcement agents, enforcement, as well as third-party interventions. Since impunity is central to our focus, some of the indicators in criminal activities include when criminals become very daring and operate without fear of government force, when victims are at mercy of criminals and the authorities saddle with the is it 5 minutes more? That would have reminded me when I was doing 30 minutes. Okay, the consequences of such impunity, if continues to fester, include increased criminality, both in intensity and volume. New crime areas will be explored by emerging army of criminal elements. Enforcement authorities will be helpless. Citizens will offer self-help. Mass action against government may erupt spontaneously. Agitation for self-actualization will increase, both in spread and intensity. Activities of domestic and foreign subversive hulks will increase. Careless speaking regional spokespersons will begin to emerge. General clamor for any other available solution, which may include restructuring, fragmentation, or their likes, will become stronger. Government control on citizens will begin to diminish. A lot of questions and issues have been raised here. It behoves on government and its agencies to put their acts right and act fast. So, in my recommendation, let me just rush through the recommendations. We talk of weak National Assembly. This ninth National Assembly is very weak. We need all-inclusive leadership. The government should reduce corruption and obey the rule of law if we must move forward. Then this decentralization of the security structure by maybe bringing the state police, which is closer to the people. Fund our security very well. Improvement on personnel remuneration and condition of service. And most importantly, the political will to deal with these challenges. Now we have to look at national dialogue and restructuring. Look at the activities of media, advocacy groups, and non-governmental organizations. And finally, on recommendation, we need to revisit the issue of safe school project embarked upon by World Economic Forum. In conclusion, in general terms, the war against insecurity has not been very successful, and every Nigerian should learn. The patronage of local vigilante groups, hunters, as well as formation of regional security outfits, seeming lone choice of amnesty or dialogue for criminals who are still unrepentant and hold the state hostage for no genuine reasons or cause are evidence of failing and overwhelmed security system. Despite the foregoing, I'm one of the advocates of one strong and indivisible Nigeria, and the fact that Nigeria still has a great hope. This is against the position of school of thought that the strength of Nigeria only lies in her fragmentation. However, this hope of one strong Nigeria is only achievable in an atmosphere of equity, patriotism, justice, and fairness. I thank you.
Please, another round of applause for this very scintillating speaker. So we're very grateful you have thrown a lot of light into some areas seem easy for those of us who are not informed about subject. I was not going to only comment now. I will simply pass the baton to my brother, Mr. Natidayo, to give us his own perspective of the topic. So, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Father, I will take this, my elder mentor. He has done a lot of this that is required for this discourse. Thank you very much. Well, Nigeria is the topic of this discussion today, which is insecurity and impunity in Nigeria. Is it an unwitting prelude to restructuring or fragmentation? Now, this has been brought to the fore the fragile state of the Nigerian state. Everybody's talking about issues concerning security or insecurity leading to the disintegration of the Nigerian state. Despite the trepidation I often feel about the gradual slide of Nigeria into a failed state, as manifestly underlined by the heightened insecurity and government gradual but steady loss of monopoly of legitimate use of force and control over its territories to armed non-state actors. I am, however, very delighted to note that an important organization like the host of this webinar has structured the pattern of our discussion today along the progressive path of identifying the root causes of the multidimensional problems of Nigeria, while also providing solutions to them accordingly. So it's my hope that today will not just be all talk without providing workable and practicable solutions to our problems. On account of heightened insecurity in Nigeria, governments and constituted authorities at all levels are increasingly finding it difficult, if not impossible, to carry out their primary purpose of government, as clearly spelled out in the governing legal document of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in Section 14.2b of the 1999 Constitution as amended, and which is security and welfare of citizens. The inability of government to carry out this most primary function is gradually eroding its legitimacy. In addition to the steep development of Nigeria's regular fault lines, ethnicity, religion, geography of origin, Nigeria is ruling under the heavy yoke of insecurity, from Boko Haram insurgency to the herdsmen banditry from the northwest, all over the country, and from, of course, piracy in the Niger Delta region, and all forms of communal clashes. It is clear that Nigeria approached the stage of state failure because of its inability to manage multidimensional crisis that has led to massive loss of lives to a proportion that Nigeria today is described as the third most terrorized country in the entire world, ahead of wartime Syria, ahead of only behind Afghanistan and Iraq. So it tells you the seriousness of the situation at hand. However, before you can find the solution to the problem, it is important to visit the root causes of the problem.
my considered view anyway, that Nigeria's problem didn't start 6 years ago, and it didn't start 21 years ago when we transited from military to civil democratic rule. In my own estimation, Nigeria's problem of insecurity that is now an existential threat to its continuous stability started way back at the beginning of Nigerian transformation in 1960. It's often said that Nigeria is a British creation from a collection of unwilling ethnic nationalities who were forced to give up their independence, and so the Nigerian state was actually programmed to fail right from the beginning because of these factors. While this is true, but it's important to understand that every nation actually came about by a form of colonialism or imperialism or in one way or the other, including our colonial masters. Britain, or a colonial creation of the Roman Empire, several centuries before they also became colonial masters. And so, what is it that is impeding the very important question that is still unresolved of our Nigerianness, our national identity? And for me, that problem is at the root of all the problems we are facing today. So while it is true, the structure of the Nigerian state has a lot to do with the current multifaceted challenges confronting Nigeria, what is even truer is that it is not so much about the physical arrangement of the structure that is the problem. It is the configuration and the operation by the political leadership of this country since 1960, when Nigeria gained flag independence, that is actually more of the problem. Convinced that Nigerians, as constituted after the Amalgamation Act of 1914, we are irreconcilably different. We are too heterogeneous to be one people. Our founding fathers negotiated from the British colonial masters a Nigerian federation that is structured along ethnogeographic fault lines, which did not allow proper integration and assimilation of Nigerians into a universal citizenship system that accords Nigerians economic and political rights wherever they choose to reside. Therefore, Nigeria became a legacy state of indigenous tribesmen, a country of indigenous tribesmen, and not a nation of citizens. And if you understand the trajectory of development across the world, the unity and the resolution of national identity of any geographic entity is a condition preceding its security as well as socio-economic development going forward. Without resolving this all-important question, no nation on earth can make the desired progress, no matter how naturally endowed with resources such a nation might be. Unfortunately, in search of a solution that is here with us, we have restructured it from since 1960 up until 1990. Now we've restructured it one way or the other. For example, we started with the 3 regional structural system. But by 1966, it collapsed. And we transited to a 12-state structure. And from there, we created more in 1975 and 21 in 1976. And we created a 30-state structure in 1991. And by 1996, we have increased to 36 states. But the problem persists because we have simply restructured the problems that was at the beginning into 36 state rating units and 724 local governments. Now, what is happening today is a culmination of this failure at the beginning. Admittedly, some administrations managed it better than the others. But in the last 6 years, admittedly, the structure of Nigeria has been operated probably in the worst manner. And we are seeing a heightened level of insecurity across board. The configuration of our structure has created out of Nigeria a problem of endemic corruption, because all ethnic groups in Nigeria, ethnic nationalities, are competing amongst themselves for the control of revenues accruing from a single source, and which is crude oil. And so, corrupt practices such as nepotism, sectionalism, favoritism, and all the other negative isms are actually legitimate cultural tools to extract from the center to the various sections of the country. And so you find out that corruption is actually a cultural heritage in Nigeria. It is ratified by our culture and unfortunately sanctioned even by our religion, because Nigeria today has also become a competition ground for the two leading Abrahamic faiths in the world. It's become a compounded problem that had a multi-layer of identity dissonance. And the failure successively to address this issue has simply made Nigeria a game for all predators that are masquerading as champions of the various sections of the country. We have two very serious security challenges. We're talking about Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, and we're talking about the activities of killing across the country. These two problems can be traceable to the very faulty foundation of the Nigerian state. Because Nigeria has been left without a cohesive national agenda for integrated development, every section is simply trying to outdo order through both legitimate and illegitimate means to extract from the center. And so a phenomenon actually crept into the entire mix, which has now given birth to what I call a complicated and complex web of security challenges that is being increasingly insurmountable. And what are these issues? Number one, at the root of the Boko crisis is what has globally become Islamist religious separation. Boko Haram insurgency is warfare. The activities that was made in the past was the living in denial of a problem that we know is festering within the Muslim community. And that is the problem of radicalization. Islamic separatism is a situation that pitches citizens of a country, pitches their citizenship against their faith, and makes the state income irreconcilable with their faith. And so the state has to give way to establish the ideal Islamic or Muslim state. And unfortunately, the radical ideology that is driving Boko Haram is not a deviant ideology in the Muslim community in Nigeria. It is a mainstream Muslim theology that has been preached for over 5 decades, consistently unchecked, and has created a whole generation of radicalized individuals that do not recognize the legitimacy of the Nigerian state, a constitutional, secular, multi-religious country. And they prefer to give way by whatever means possible to erect in its place an Islamic state. Now, various means have been applied towards this direction. Beginning in 1999, there was an experiment with political Islam, with the introduction of Sharia law across some states in northern Nigeria. But unfortunately, the political class only used Islamic separatism as a means of getting to power by posing to be the champion of something that is quite unrealizable, going by the history of the Muslim world, for the Prophet, peace be upon him. But nevertheless, they took advantage of the people's desire to pledge something they know they will know to do, put into power, and attempted to do it. But when they failed to do it, because essentially a Sharia governed Islamic state is one that justice and fairness and equity for all. But when they failed to do this, because their intention was not to do that which the people desire, people became disconnected with the political leadership and wanted something more, something more. And that was how the Boko Haram sect stepped in to fill that back. And so they demonized democracy in its entirety. That look, you can't achieve this ideal Islamic state through any form of democratic means. The only way to achieve it is through armed conflict. You see, when we try to narrow the Boko Haram insurgency to the activities of Alimadu Sharif between 2003 and 2010, we sometimes overlook the real issues. He was simply trying to take advantage of something, actually burnt his hands and incinerated his entire region. The ideology behind the Boko Haram crisis precedes both Alimadu Sharif and even the modern era in Nigeria. And so we've not been able to begin the process of reversing the tendency towards Islamic separatism. So for every Boko Haram insurgent you kill in the field, the theater of war, you have probably 100 willingly ready to replace them in the battlefield. And that's why when concerns were raised in the past for having members of Boko Haram even in government infiltrated or fifth columnists even in government, it is because of people are logically meant with what Abu Shekal's Boko Haram stands for. I was asked to talk about the Chibok. You see, when it happened, the government of the day was a bit slow in acting. Not because they didn't want to act, but because those who should know, who should provide the context for the Boko Haram insurgency and define it as it is. We are living in denial and we are of everything happening on the government of the day. And so the government of that day felt politically motivated conflict to discredit their own administration. Otherwise, anybody who understands the ideology of Haram would have understood that abduction of schoolgirls or any form of abduction is in line with their ideology. It is a duty of faith to abduct people who are not members of your sect. As war booty, it is something that is doctrinal. So this was not properly defined by people who should know. The government of the day interpreted it as a politically motivated conflict to discredit the administration. But the most dramatic and the most dangerous abduction was the Dapchi abduction. In 2015, around August, when Boko pledged allegiance to ISIS, ISIS decreed that henceforth Boko Haram must begin to engage in activities in with Islamic rules of war engagement, which means Boko Haram is no longer allowed to kill fellow Muslims. Indiscriminate bombing, cross-border, simply target government agents, security agencies, and the enemies of the state, because they consider enemies from the state. But when Abu Shekau refused to abide by this directive, because as far as he's concerned, if you're not with him in Sambisa, you don't as a Muslim. There was a split in the ranks. And so ISWAP came on board. ISWAP is more dangerous. It's actually the biggest problem I'm facing today, and not even Abu Shekau's faction, because when ISWAP abducted Dapchi schoolgirls, they used it as a freak show to demonstrate the fact that they are now less dangerous to the predominantly Muslim community in the Northeast and wanted their support. So they took the girls and then brought the girls back and left the lone Christian girl there as a sign of we versus them. And unfortunately, this has gained for ISWAP enormous legitimacy amongst the people that we are already radicalized in the last 40 or so years. As we speak today, ISWAP is gaining ground, and at the rate at which they are killing our soldiers, if it continues like this, they will just exterminate probably all of our soldiers in one theater of war, and the rest of us will be at the mercy of their own headquarters command in Borno there. So I have taken my time to explain some of this in-depth analysis, because if we want to reverse some of these tendencies, We need to go to the root causes of the problem and begin to reverse them. And how do we solve this particular problem? We need to roll back issues such as religious extremism, intolerance. We need to reform the religious practice in Nigeria. Religion has to be reformed and regulated by the state. We cannot have country of two systems. It shouldn't be allowed for states to operate any law that is outside the constitution. That is something we must do. And the urgency for that is now, because even those that brought up this issue have become the biggest victims of the side effect of their political experimentation with Islamic separatism. And so to solve the Boko Haram crisis in the long run, we need to reform the theology, the doctrines that created Boko Haram in the first place. And sadly, these doctrines are contained in the mainstream of Muslim theology in Nigeria. And I've said this severally. Now, on the issue of banditry, it's unfortunate. Banditry is a function of transborder ethnic nationalism. A situation when certain ethnic groups in Nigeria share cultural, linguistic, and traditional ties with some other similar ethnic groups across the border. And their loyalties lie to that, community of borderless ethnic groups rather than with the Nigerian states. And so when they felt aggrieved within Nigeria, they went across the Sahel to bring in mercenary fighters to fight fellow Nigerians over the economics of land utilization and land distribution. But as the saying goes, when you bring in a warm-hearted wood into your own house, you unwittingly invite the reptile for supper. And so when they brought in some of these mercenaries, some other mercenaries whose intention was not to come and fight in any ethnic warfare, but the criminal franchise of kidnapping for ransom and armed robbery. And unfortunately, those who should know, who are in charge of our policies, both polity and economy, continue to look at the issue of killer herdsmen through the narrow of farmer herders crisis, which is not. It has gone beyond. It is now a full-blown terrorist activity that is tearing the country apart. But unfortunately, it appears as though those who are in charge of our affairs, who share the same ethnicity with the killer herdsmen, have refused to choose their nationality, their Nigerian nationality, over their ethnicity. And so it is affecting the response mechanism of even those in charge of our security in combating this issue. And what we have today, we have governors in this region that are telling us that they only negotiate people killing our own people. We have intellectuals coming out to say, look, they have a legitimate grounds for killing people that are even poorer than them, people that are even more marginalized than them. They have a legitimate grounds for doing what they're doing. And so when you have such cacophony of voices, now of an existential threat to the Nigerian state, and some of them that are in power, it makes the situation very, very, very dangerous, because we are heading steadily towards Sudan, through Rwanda. I said this because what happened in Rwanda in 1994 is already happening in Nigeria today. The problem is people like to cite the Rwanda people, unfortunately switch the roles of the various actors in the Rwandan episode. In Rwanda, you had an ethnic group that decided that another ethnic group had wronged them in the past and unleashed terror against them and killed them in numbers of up to 1 million in just 3 months. It is the same thing in Nigeria. A group of people have decided that the reason why they are poor, the reason why their houses were rustled, the reason why they don't have schools, the reason why they don't have amenities is because of the rest of us Nigerians, and have embarked on a killing spree of everybody in sight, and are exacting revenge from fellow Nigerians that are not responsible in any way for whatever it is that they're complaining about. So we have a Rwanda that we have already, but Rwanda is likely to push us towards Sudan. Because if you look at the similarity between Nigeria and Sudan in terms of religious delineation, we are headed steadily towards until something drastic is meant to happen. But the way out for me is not just about restructuring of the structure of Nigeria alone. We have to revisit what was faulty at the beginning of our journey to nation, which is the unresolved question of national identity. We need to revisit that issue. We need to deploy a deliberate political process that will begin the process of uniting Nigerians, irrespective of ethnicity or religion, around a common cause. We need to create out of Nigeria a Nigerian nation with citizens that are law-abiding. Tribesmen don't obey laws, they obey their cultural instinct. And when you have a country of over 1,000 ethnic nationalities competing at the same time for space and resources, what you're having today is inevitable. So we need a deliberate political process that will begin to transform Nigerians from indigenous tribesmen to citizens. We also need to back it up with a purposeful administrative procedure that uses all things possible to bring about the ideal nation out of a fractured country as we have it today. Otherwise, if you restore into whatever format you want, the fundamental issue of citizenship, you would have simply restructured the problem without solving the problem. And so going forward, I would think that we have 2 years ahead of us before the next general election. Citizens' participation in the process of electing leadership of this country now in earnest, to such an extent that we will begin to move away from politics of identity. You see, our leadership recruitment process is hinged on identity politics. And identity politics entrenches corruption. Identity politics entrenches nepotism. It deepens the roots of discord. Because in trying to favor is so all of the problems we're facing today is simply traceable to the fact that there is not yet an evolved nation from a country of multi-ethnic nationalities. Thank you very much, sir.
Another round of applause for Mr. Metzger. I'm sure having heard from the two speakers, we all have a fairly balanced, very balanced view of the problem. The problem is not neither mine, nor a soft problem. It's a consumptive issue. And I will reserve whatever I have not jotted down here for my closing remarks, and then hand over to Paul to take care of this segment of like we that are online who have indicated that you would like to speak. So please try and show just 20-25 minutes for this segment. We want to get back to the two speakers by 3:45, and then they have 5 minutes to round and maybe respond to questions, make their own comments on some of the interventions, and I have 5 minutes to make my closing remarks. So over to you.
Please let us give the panelists another round of applause. And going from what the coordinator of this session has said, we have very limited time. First, permit me, Mr. Coordinator, I'll deal with those online first. So, do we have anyone who has raised his hand up online? Can I have the name, please? I can't see from my end. We have an Ayodele Adepiton. So, Ayodele, can we have your contribution? 2 minutes. Allow him to speak. 2 minutes. Ayodele.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, you have 2 minutes, so please, your question or contribution. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can go
Good
ahead.
afternoon. All right, sir. All right, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Ayodele Samuel Adekuton. I'm a lawyer. So I want to especially appreciate the organizer for this erudite webinar. The issue of insecurity and impunity is a thing of concern in our dear country, Nigeria. Just like a joke, this whole thing started back in 2009 when the issue of Boko Haram insurgent came in. And just like the second speaker has said, the people at the authority, they took it with levity and they were total denial, but not stone. At the end of the whole thing, it was being confirmed that this thing is real. And gradually it graduated from Boko Haram to S-Men to banditry and all of that. Here we are today. I asked one question, that what are the roles that lawyers can play in order to curb this menace that has been facing our dear country, Nigeria, because this is an issue of concern to us. You can't even like travel from here to here, from within states, without no fear of being kidnapped or being adopted. So I think this issue of insecurity and impunity need to be addressed earnestly by every quarter responsible for it. And all hands must be on deck to this, because it is the business of everybody. And the lion group of people that have the whole duty to play is the people in charge of our security. I believe that the last, from what I heard, from the last, is it kidnapping or adoption that happened in Kaduna, that just a javelin throw to Defense Academy in Kaduna. So I think there's a whole lot of things that is happening that to the rest people we are not seeing. And everybody must just wake up to their duty. And we have to hold those people accountable to whatsoever that is happening, because this has to do with the life of citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I think I will put a stop to this now, so that I will not overshoot my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ayodele. We also have Gabriel Fowodu. Gabriel Fowodu, you can now get him online from Canada.
Thank you so much. Can I speak, please? Am I on to speak?
Yes.
Yes, I want to. Very great. I'm very grateful for this rare opportunity and want to sincerely appreciate JB Daudu and his foundation and the panelists. Good talk. I believe in the rule of law. And I know we have establishments in Nigeria, institutions to right this wrong. What is the role of the legislators? What are they doing? We have a whole apparatus of the National Assembly. We have all the state assemblies. What are they saying? Because what we are noticing here is they're talking about 2023. My suggestion is, having listened to the very wonderful presentation, incredible presentations. Some of them we had before, some are novel, about what we are doing. What is the role of the legislative houses? We should involve them, because it is better to dialogue than to go to war. The embers of war are just very, very clear. Let us not deceive ourselves. They are very, very clear. And nobody is going to sound alarm that war has started. It started. See what my immediate learned friend said. You can't travel anywhere. You are not too sure you're going to get the next legislation. To travel from Abuja to what is it called, to Kaduna, is a big problem, even by rail. So when economy is being broken down, lives and property have no value. What our legislators, what are they doing? We should involve them. And I also want to suggest, if we need to take some motions to court to stop apparatus of state from working or making them better, we better do it. Because from what I looked at, see what happened in the US a couple of months ago. The legislative houses came up and said, look, we've been embarrassed, but we have to right the wrong. But what are they doing? We need to take urgent steps. We need to call the stakeholders. We need to dialogue a lot. I want to thank you for the opportunity. There are so many things I'd like to talk about, but they are sensitive issues. We are making recommendations here for petition to be. People are not listening to us, so I better just leave it like that. I want to commend the effort because it's better to do something than to be silent. We are moving forward, and I pray that we will help ourselves and heaven will help us. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, for that contribution.
It's my pleasure.
Do we have anyone else online? If we don't have anyone else online, coordinator, distinguished panelists, I think we move to those who are with us physically. So please, just by raising your hand, can you indicate you want to have a question or a contribution? I think we have one person for now. So I hand the floor over to you, sir. Contribution to be 2 minutes.
I want to first appreciate the convener of this webinar for every commitment toward national growth and prosperity. I want to appreciate the speaker for being scientific in their analysis. That's the one thing we lack in this great culture of ours. When we abandon the truth and conceptualize the art of lying by coming out with misconstrued hypotheses, I think we are going to be in a very, very bad situation. Thank the speaker that mentioned that at times something are misconstrued, like the farmers' elders crisis. It's a crisis of long time ago, maybe in the 60s and 70s. Rather, we have the Fulani elders attack now. But when you see in literature, when people refer to farmers, even when an elder statement was giving its intervention, it was analyzed as if the farmers attacked the elders and rustled their cars. That's not the case. It's a situation where some people that feel that they are above the law because of the theory of manifest destiny that was propounded by John O'Sullivan in the 18th century, in 1845 to be precise, in the United States. Some group of people feel that they are superior to others, and they feel they can't be challenged. And you've seen them making reckless statements again and again. One of the sitting governors even made a statement, 2012, that, and I will quote, he said, "We write this for all to read. Anyone, soldier or not, that killed the fool and it takes a loan payable one day, no matter how long it takes." This governor was the first to even speak to bandits. People have been, they say you negotiate with you, even beg them, I even pay them not to kill again, for God's sake. People are watching. I will ask the question, was Nigeria this polarized under Obasanjo or Obasanjo's administration? No. We have always had a problem of that crisis of maybe ethnicity, crisis, biography. The leaders were being fair. They didn't tell the country toward regional or maybe ethnic bias, as we've seen now. Our problem, as you said, started long ago. We have the problem of population explosion that nobody's looking at. Matthew's theory on population stated that he posited that infrastructural development is at arithmetic progression, while population growth is at geometric progression. When Nigeria came into being, we see a situation whereby we realized that politics is a politics of number. All the premiers, they encourage their people to give birth. Even in the Igbo land, when a woman gives birth to a devil of 14, they kill a goat for her. That's when the Yoruba, they base their population growth on the premise of human capital development. They have the cocoa farm and all the kola nut farm that they use the people, their children to farm. The Igbo, they stay in the palm oil. But with exigency and the changing environment, nobody
give back to number of children that they can't cater for. But unfortunately, the North, they back it up. I'm from North, so at least they won't see me as being biased. They back it up with religion. And when you bring in religion to Nigeria, either in Christian or Muslim, people become very biased. They become very emotional. But now, you see people giving back to number of children they can't cater for. They put them at the street, and these children were being marginalized on daily basis. When you see as man, you keep them aside. You don't see them as families. And now these children, they've grown up, and they are now to be social menace. And they are terrorizing everyone with sociopathic ferocity now. And we're all afraid. Some of the bands, they have this external dynamics. It's a very complex situation. When they come in, let me tell you the truth, this is that evil communication corrupt good morals. When I say we have peaceful and you are right. But one of our lecturers, Dr. Mike Abu, I call his name, his two sons were kidnapped last year, and he demanded for a ransom in the Igala land. His only son is thought that he's going to divide the ransom himself. On the process of reaching there, he went to their settlement. Even said the kidnapper has gone to see his father. He was within the land. Let's not deceive ourselves. This impunity is what is destroying Nigeria. That's why I look at the topic, insecurity and impunity. If there had not been impunity, the strife for the breakage would have been there. This manifest theory, the theory of manifest destiny is really affecting us. When a tribe feels that it's better than you, superior to you, some of us that finish in this area, they tell us to our face that we are the grass that they eat. And unfortunately, it's a kind of power between the north and the south. We could contain it, but now the weak leadership that we have give other the inclusion that okay, this is the time to galvanize the action and maybe emasculate regions. Nobody will agree. We can see with the emergence of Kanu, Nnamdi Kanu in the east, he has sorted the security network and it's even a bigger problem for Nigeria now. They're educated, they are technical, they are tactical, they have strategy, and they have sponsors. Before, they only have parental guns, now they have AK-47 rocket-propelled grenades, and they combine it with spiritual power. I don't believe it, but they have the capacity to unleash fear anywhere they want to. And the bitter truth that people, they feel you can't deny that some people are not marginalized. Look at our appointments. When you make it one-sided, people are bound to respond. And this is one of the reasons why Nigeria is having this kind of crisis. Like the northern policy on education. My advice, as you mentioned, the issue of radicalism. Some clerics will just come and preach. Institutionalization of ethnic and religious prejudice, like what happened in Kano by Isba. We know that alcohol is one of the second employer of labor in Nigeria in the field economy. It's thriving. It contributed to Nigeria GDP and gross national product, and the tax from it. Every state partake of it, and alcohol is a product that is being consumed more in the down south. Now that you attack the people that is doing the business and they have losses in millions and billions of naira, how do you want them to feel as a one in United Nigeria? You pick things upon yourself and you make law that is superior to the constitution of the country. Now we have the emergence of a character in the West that is stronger than all the governors combined. Me, I prefer to subscribe to the security protection of Sunday Igboho than anybody in Nigeria. And the West is even more respected than all the governors because they are playing rhetorics, they are playing with people's destiny. In the Southeast now, we have Nnamdi Kanu that is stronger than any of the governors. So if we start addressing the root cause of it and look at the issue the way they are, if we just plan, if we want to pretend that, oh, there's no problem, everything is okay, that this problem is a balance, it's not balanced. Because some people feel that they are better than the other. Where we are today. My other recommendation is that we have to have respect for religious, cultural, and economic diversity of others. If you don't respect it, honestly, we have a crisis already. And it can't go away immediately. Even if we come to solve it, it can't go away. We have to have policy on planned population, because if we get it right now, our population will cause another crisis. Remember, Obasanjo was able to write off the debt, and we started afresh. I think 2007. What happened now? We are indebted to the tune of 33.6 trillion naira, and we are using almost 50% to service the debt. It's a scary situation, and the preponderance of our recurrent expedition over capital expedition is also frightening. How do we get out of this mess? And we refuse to cut down the cost of governance, which is also part of this problem. I know that they are political elite, they are good with hunting. If they want to exploit us, they quickly resort to ethnicity and religion. And when they get there, you see the sentiment of Nigeria. But we thank God, Nigeria is getting better. We have to restructure our education system to be of technical base, and we should focus on human capital development. If we can do this, I think we get out of this crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balogun. Sorry, we still have some contributors online. We have Honorable Justice Ajile online. My Lord, can you hear us? Can we have him online? I heard he has a contribution to make. My Lord, can you hear us? We have about 4 persons online that have indicated. We have Abdul Yaya, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Also, he wants to make a contribution. Who is ready? So we also have Theophilus Bucknor online. So those are the 4 contributors, and Mohammed Adama. So any of these people you can connect so that we can make the progress.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Good afternoon.
You can hear me now. Oh.
Yes. I want to commend the rule of law. The Lana Senior Advocate, Mr. J.B. Daudu, and the entire foundation for the good work that you've been doing on all topical issues.
Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, okay.
Hello.
My name is Abdullah Yahaya, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Okay, you're welcome, sir. You have 2 minutes.
All right. All right. So let me just rush through all protocols duly observed. Now, I want to start by saying the problem of insecurity is multidimensional, I think. First, those who are 40, 45, 50 years old will recognize the fact that this country used to be quite peaceful. The issues of religion and ethnicity was, I wouldn't say it did not exist, but it was minimal. Now, to a large extent, the problems that we are going through today stems from bad governance. And we have bad governance first because we as citizens first at times have shied away from our responsibilities. Have shied away from these responsibilities because we've decided to elect persons who we believe either come from our ethnic groups or come from our religious groups, whether or not those persons have the capacity to do that which is just. All religions in this country, whether they be Christians, Muslims, or traditionalists, all believe in justice. And at the heart of our problem is injustice. Justice is given to each person that which is due to him, not minding where he comes from. So if we institute good governance and justice to all men, irrespective of where they come from, irrespective of their tribe, their religion, or their ethnicity, people will no longer feel the need that I need somebody from my area to be at the helm of affairs so I can get that which is due to me. Now, the problems of insecurity stem to some extent from the fact that we have allowed the system to be so perverted that We have children now whose parents cannot speak to them. In the past, a child was seen as a child belonged to everybody. So it was in everybody's interest to ensure that a child was well brought up. So we had less problems because everybody made it his business, and the parents of the child did not see another person disciplining their child as being somebody who hated their child. But today, each parent sees his children as being his only responsibility, and he's the only one who has the right or the capacity to discipline his children. So it gets to the point where parents no longer can control their own children, and the children then become a menace to the entire society. So I believe that if we get back, if we all as citizens, not just as leaders, if we decide we want good governance, they are decent, God-fearing people in our society, but given the system that we have now, even if they come into power, they will not last because the system is such that it will not carry them, because they will refuse to be corrupt, they will refuse to favor their own tribes, and therefore those who are supposed to assist them will not do so. So if we all make a concerted effort to get back to being honest and God-fearing in whatever religion we are and from wherever we are, I think Nigeria will start being good for all of us and for our children and for our great-grandchildren, God willing. I most sincerely thank the Rule of Law Foundation for the interventions that you do, because it brings to life these issues and it allows us to talk about them and to see what we can do as members of society to try to address some of these issues in the little way that we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lennis. Let's give him a round of applause. My Lord Sadile, I know you have been waiting. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can
yes,
you hear
yes.
me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I hope you are hearing me too.
Yes, my Lord, you can go on.
All right, thank you, Paul. First and foremost, I want to commend the Rule of Law Development Foundation for this wonderful program. I want to be simply identified as a very good friend of the Rule of Law Development Foundation. The speakers have equally been very wonderful, very erudite, and I want to appreciate them too. Now, I listened to the first speaker who went through the history of this insecurity we're experiencing in Nigeria. And I have been able to deduce one fact from his paper. And it is the fact that very clearly in this country, it appears we do not pay attention to some very important things, maybe because we consider them as insignificant or as very little. In fact, in other words, we do not apply the wisdom of a stitch in time, which they say saves 9. Looking at the history as stated by the first speaker, I discovered that there are some steps that ought to have been taken, which if they had been taken, probably would not have reached the deteriorating level that we are today in terms of insecurity. He mentioned the extortion by policemen when they carry AK-47. And we saw them, we knew them, we saw how they were operating then. It was, well, perhaps the only thing we could count against them was the extortion. But we didn't know that our failure to nip it on the board at that time made some people who have now grown to be terrorists and bandits to study them, to see how they were using AK-47 to extort. And now they have magnified it. And AK-47 now is being used for kidnapping and so many other things. Number two, kidnapping itself. When it started, from the history that the first speaker related, it was limited to the South. And essentially, it was against these foreigners then. But as at that time, we did not pay attention to. Nobody imagined that some people too were studying them and understudying them to see that it could be a means that would develop into a very bigness and a very big business and flourishing business today. And now today we see what it is all over the country. Now, I have one question and I have a basis for asking this question. My question to the first speaker really is, being a security expert and somebody who had been government, SSS, and what have you in the past, why is it that it appears that the bandits, the terrorists are more sophisticated than our security outfits? And I have not just said this without having my reason. There was an experience here in my local area where somebody, well, let me put it in this way now by saying the sophistication here now is not just in terms of arms and ammunition, but even in terms of technology. In terms of technology, it appears that these criminals, they are more sophisticated than our security outfits. So the experience is this: somebody was kidnapped and he was in a captivity for a period of about over 30 days. In those 30 days, all the security agents, they claimed that they were tracking the kidnappers, and they were giving us results of their trackings. Sometimes they would say the man was in Zaria, at another time in Kaduna, at another time in Benin. Ultimately, when the man came out from captivity after over 30 days, his story was that from day one to the last day when he was released, he was kept in a cave and he did not leave that place. So my deduction is that the ability of the criminals now to redirect the trackings of our security agents, showing that somebody who was in a cave somewhere in the bush in Okemi, was in Kaduna, was in Zaria, and at another time was in Benin, is amazing. So please, I have this question, not just in terms of arms and ammunition, but even in terms of technology. Why can't we equip our security outfits technologically so that they can meet up with the demands of kidnapping and terrorism? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my Lord. So we have two more questions and contributions. One, we have your own, Adam Mohammed. Okay. Okay, what about Mr. Buckner? Mr. Buckner, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello?
Sir, please, your contribution. We can hear you.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Please, your contribution. Yes.
Thank you. Well,
yes, sir.
Good
Your
afternoon,
contribution,
everybody. Okay. Good afternoon. I appreciate this opportunity. All I have to say that being a recent and insecurity that we have been going through that are the subject of discussion are nothing less than alarming. However, I believe that as I sent on the chat there, that if we do, then that might be a good starting point. The cries that we're hearing for division and everything stem from gross injustice. And the sooner we, the leaders of this country, get it together and put equal justice for all, I'm sure that would be a good starting point for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And that wraps up all the contributions we have so far. Okay, we have one more. Please, 2 minutes quickly.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And thank you to the panel. I have just 2 questions and I'll go straight to the point. Okay, sorry, my name is Victory Emain. The first question is to the second speaker. You mentioned in your opinion that the root problem of Nigeria and corruption, insecurity, impunity in Nigeria is as a result, or it began in 1960 in 1960 when we gained independence. However, I know there's no need crying over spilled milk in the past, but in my opinion, I feel like we need to know the problem exactly to be able to, create solutions. In my opinion, I think right from 1914 when we got amalgamated, that is the Northern and Southern Protectorates. Well, right from that time when we were brought together to create a colony, which is now Nigeria, we had different ideas, we had different opinions. We weren't used to living together. So my question is, that being said, do you think, in your opinion, Nigeria gained independence before she was ready? Was it too early for that independence? And the second question is to the first speaker. Thank you so much. I learned quite a lot. We already have a fragmented political system. We practice an imperfect rule of law, imperfect democracy, which is evident in ethnic and religious tribalism. So how do we ensure unity, not just amongst the people, but how do we ensure that the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary are restructured? How do we ensure unity amongst the arms of government? Because these days we watch on TV, they're fighting. There's no unity. So those are my questions. Thank you.
One.
The coordinator, the panelist. My name is Tijani Buzemenai. To the first speaker, I 100%, almost 80% agree with your recommendations of what you said of move forward. The southern you said, I agree with that. The only one I have, it is true, but we talk about weak National Assembly. What brought the weakness? We have to look at it from the beginning. What brought the weakness? To other thing, and look at, is it talking of the country as a whole? Are we talking about the government only or the citizen? We're talking about corruption. Is it only the government that's corrupt or we too are corrupt? We have to think of us as individuals. What is our role? What are we doing? Are we helping in reducing corruption? This is my way on what the second speaker. The second speaker, I totally agree with the submission, whatever you said about it. But I want to make, let's say, about Islam or about Muslims or about Sharia or that. As was pointed out, if you said Sharia, but they bring the point of Sharia in the sense that once you say Sharia, Sharia doesn't mean steal and cut your hand. Sharia is complete way of life. It's a question of justice, fairness, and equity. That is Sharia. If you say Sharia, just look at Sharia. Sharia, no. You don't look at that. And then I can be a herdsman. I can be a farmer. It's the same person could be a herdsman and a farmer. It's if it's somebody's herdsman, is a full animal, or completely is a house, is a farmer. No, you can be a herdsman, you can be a full animal. That which is rightly. This herdsman full animal has been gone to this level because of grab of land. And then no sophistication. We don't try our way of doing things. In the sense that we have to mechanize or develop the way of doing things. As a Fulani man or somebody who's heard animal, yes, you cannot continue roaming around where you have more urban areas, more contribution like that, and then you see yourself the same thing like that. So that's herdsman and things like that. We have to look at it very well. I'm from Jigawa State. I know how my governor handled that one when he came into power because every year we get clashes between the Fulanis and herdsmen in our areas. So, but we did all our best that we trying to get game reserves, razor reserve. We try to do this kind of develop them. But as you said, my land said, political will. When the new government came in, they said, "Oh, do whatever you like. You are free to do things like that." But go back to square one. So these are things like that. And the last question I can ask, you talk about citizen participation in politics. How do we participate in politics? What are the movements? What are the criteria of politics? How political situation we're now? If you said like my land president, we have some things somebody said in Nigeria, you have good people. Even in this office, if you ask who do you think could be so and so, you know it. But because of selfish interest, because of so many things, because of fear, because of the way you put like that, how can you use somebody to contest election? You said you have to do it from a party. You said, I don't know what to call it. You said you are an electing party. You can't become a governor or a house assembly member until you belong to a party. And the same party is saying you cannot go and contest until you pay 500,000. For God's sake, as poor as I am now, how good I am if I want to contest election. You say, for councillor, you say I have 200,000 naira. How can I pay that back? I do not happen. So, sir, as you enter that, how do you think citizen participation in politics will be positively? That is my contributions and my question. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Coordinator, I understand Buhari Grant presentation. I don't know what time at the yes. So I think I want to hand over back. So what the idea
I'm grateful, sir, for the opportunity. My turn very clear. I agree with you, sir, with your submission. Say for one reason, this idea of accusing a colonial masters, for how long shall we remain at this accusation level? I don't think that's the issue. The issue is just that we are not so lucky to have the right leaders that are supposed to drive this course of this country called Nigeria. Everything we are doing on a daily basis is infected with this virus called sentiment. And we say the problem that is facing us security-wise, there are no solutions. We talk about Sambisa as if Sambisa is another word entirely from this world that we belong. I spent years in my Maiduguri. I know some of this terrain. What is happening in Kaduna here? Kaduna has boundary with some other states. Is it sharing boundary with a country that we cannot even send common drove to go there and survey and get us some results? Those of us that are not even advanced in security, there are some things we can do that can solve some of these things. Not to talk about those who were wasted our money on for special training to provide solution for us, and they keep on story. To me, our problem is not too far. We are the cause of our problem because we are not determined to solve this problem. We don't need to travel far. If we are determined, now something happened in Kaduna. I tell you, this is the leadership from the Kaduna or about you or wherever. You see them speaking out of sheer sentiment for reason best known to them. Solutions are not provided kind of atmosphere because we keep on getting it wrong. But the very day we are able to come together and said enough is enough for this problem, then we get this. So this idea of apportioning blame to Loluga, amalgamation, and the rest, of course, it has been overtaken by events. We are the architect of our own country, and we can put it in the right perspective that we want it to be. Thank you for the audience. I wouldn't talk more because there is fear. Because if you talk more, you don't know what will happen to you when you get out of this place. for security reasons. Thank you very much, sir.
That lack of political will, Mr. Ade. So that is the contribution from the House. So, Mr. Coordinator, I think I'll hand over to the first speaker to deal with any question directed to him. I'm going to give or comment to give his closing remarks. I would like to have
Thank you very much. The question from the first, I couldn't pick the name, the first person. Say weak National Assembly and role of the legislature. I tie it with a question from Victory Imenyi and Tijani. On legislature. The only difference between a democracy and dictatorship is the legislature. The military government has the executive, they have judiciary, but they don't have the legislature to make laws. They are within themselves, the lawmakers and the lawbreakers. You can wake up, issue, detain anybody you want to, and without looking back. And he said, Victory in particular said, how do we ensure the arms of government are restored? I will just read here for want of time what I said about the assembly. Just a paragraph under my recommendation. This arm of government is fundamental to the success and survival of any democracy. It shouldn't be a collection of persons unmindful of the sufferings of the citizens. At a time like this, they shouldn't be aloof or be caught napping. They must engage the executive, security agencies, and police. The Ninth Assembly has not been awake, has not done enough, not proactive enough, not firm enough, and perhaps not sensitive enough to the plight of the people that they represent. Situation, I'll make this paper available. A situation where the head of the National Assembly will come out and tell us that we'll do anything the executive wants us to do. So where is this power? So the present National Assembly is now part of the executive. There's nothing that will come up and they will question it. And what is again the other factor is corruption. How did the leadership of the National Assembly emerge? Did they emerge from willing members who say this will be our principal officer? They are manipulated. It's still the same corruption. How did our assembly members, even the state assembly members, emerge? The governor will sit down and determine who will go. And why? Our electoral process will throw all people, incompetent people, because the processes are not right. If, for instance, I will never seek any elective position. Mike, I will not seek any elective position under this present dispensation. One, I don't have the money to throw about. Two, the day they will tell you that your father is not your, and you begin to doubt actually whether your father is really your father. Blackmail, intrigue, conspiracy, and all what have you. So it's too dirty for people like us. And but we cannot sit down and fold our hands. We continue to make comments to ensure that corrections are done. So that's the issue of the National Assembly. We have a very weak national. This is the weakest National Assembly since my birth. At least I witnessed Nigerian independence. Now, my Lord, Justice Tajile ask a question. Why is it that appears? That one interests me a lot. Why is it that appears that the bandits are more sophisticated than our security outfits in terms of technology? It's just simple. These people have no rule of engagement. The bandits, they have no rule of engagement. The military, our security agencies, they have rule of engagement. You cannot just come, perhaps when you see people are kidnapped and you go there, you want to free the people, open fire, you have a lot of collateral damage. So that is why, and they get their arms unhindered. Our own, we cannot, we must pass all the protocols to acquire arms, but their own, they get it illegally. So it's easier for them, especially from the Sahel, those people who are running away from the Sahel to sell their arms. Even our soldiers are helping in arming them, selling arms to them, some hiring. When you finish, you return and you are paid. I've said it even on air that out of the 12 people that were involved in my kidnap, 4 of them were serving soldiers. So how do you explain it? People who are supposed to protect you are involved. All these bandits you are talking about, they don't operate alone, they operate in silos. They have cells, they are very well organized. So it's not just the issue of Fulani, but Fulani militia are more in number. That's why we begin to talk about all these Fulani. And very soon, I believe, the bubble will burst because people have started talking how they came into Nigeria. People have started talking. To go and steal is not a problem. It's to share the loot that becomes a problem. So a time will come when you are disadvantaged, you open up and say certain things. So on the issue of technology, they are not more advanced. They use what is called deception. If they use their telephone, you easily track their location. So what they do now is to use the telephone of their victims. And when they want to make a call, they can go to another place. You'll be tracking them. Yes, the person is still there. They use the telephone. They say, yes, we located this one. Before you know it, they're in another location. But I very much doubt if a particular victim would have geolocated in Benin while he's in Kaduna. I very much doubt that. But within the environment, Abuja make a call and go and switch off their phone until they will turn next to be contacted, and they go ahead and make their call from different locations, and also make their calls on their own phone to their people they are talking to. So it's just issue of deception, because they are also, like I said, some of them are retired military people. If you see the rate of their precision in marksmanship, you begin to wonder where did they get the training. So it's because of a lot of difficulties, challenges that people are even going through criminal, and I did classify them in my paper to have the ideological criminals and the people who went into crime out of circumstance. So that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start with my sister here. You asked a question about the amalgamation. If I understand the question clearly now, you're trying to find out that, I mean, our problem, is this at 1960 or in the amalgamation? People put together that do not have and what is the solution? You're trying to ask in essence, if this problem can be resolved in modern day Nigeria. At the right time. Very important question. Like my brother here said, I'm not one of those who believe that Nigeria was a and I've stated it in my brief remark. I do not think Britain was also a creation of other colonial power. I also do not believe that Nigeria is made up of people of different cultures. No. In fact, I do not believe Nigeria is a diverse country. I believe Nigeria is more of a plural country. Nigeria is a monoracial country. And not let me go to Nigeria from the north to the south, to the west, are all linked culturally, linguistically, traditionally, politically before 1940. In fact, the web of connection between the indigenous peoples of Nigeria extends beyond foreign borders of Nigeria into places like Maradi, into places like Dahomey in the present Republic, as far as so Nigeria was not supposed to be regarded as a country of people of irreconcilable people. And I also believe that Nigeria is a country that will manage properly diversity to such an extent that we have a united country through and through. Yes, if you ask if independence came too early, the answer is yes. By 1960, this is what they said. Saw themselves as parallel, are completely different. I mean, so different that they negotiated a federating unit that was structured around a geographic fault lines. You had the southwest region for the Yorubas, the region for the Igbos, and the northern region in parts of Nigeria. It was that region. It was impossible for a white to be an Igbo and northern, or for somebody to be Hausa and an Eastern. It was almost impossible then. Even though the NCNC made certain attempts towards using a deliberate political process to make it possible for someone like Umar today, the Hausa man from Kano, to be an Enugu man, or even being the mayor of Enugu. But what happened in the Western Region of Assembly in 1954 or thereabouts, when Azikwe was denied premiership, actually it changed the entire course. But Azikwe had to go back to the Eastern Region, where Ayoita, a man from the minority part of the Eastern Region, had to be removed by certain kind of means to make way for Azikwe to become the leader of the business of the House of the Eastern Region. And that triggered the acrimony we saw not before the Bennett and continuously. But unfortunately, like I said, it had to do with, forgive my language, I think it's a sign of primitivity for somebody of the same race to look upon somebody to look upon each other as too different and consider themselves diverse. I said this because those who colonize us, those without as the white people, are similarly looking us like us. At the point of amalgamation, the British monarch in George the King of England was of Germanic ancestry. So I told you the number of 80 around the Niger area. So they prepared for Britain. It was Scottish ancestry. The lady who gave us the name, Nigeria from Niger area, Lady Lugard, is of Irish ancestry. Lugard himself actually came here and did the legwork. And from what I've just explained, you can see that even among the white racial categories of the British program master, they had their differences. They had Welsh among them. They were full of Jewish ancestry, of French ancestry. In fact, the current Prime Minister of Britain is of Turkish ancestry. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is of Indian ancestry. And so, we were that time in that as diverse, but they had a common binding of the British nationality. They were able to subdue their primordial difference under a broad territorial identity. That's what I'm lacking. So essentially, you have Nigeria, 60 of them, all have people also and all of them. And this has created inequalities of identity in our recruitment process. Like you talk about National Assembly, you can't have a National Assembly that will legislate for national interest. Because the reason why he was elected was for his clan, his ethnicity, or his immediate community. So when it comes to Abuja, and for himself, so when it comes to Abuja, Because they're all competing among themselves, the elite, for who has more watches to defend ethnic interests. It comes first, self-preservation interest. And so you can never have a piece of legislation that will be national interest. It's not possible under the current configuration. And that's why I said earlier that we need to reconfigure federating units away from ethnic enclaves to economic center. Look, as a Nigerian, I should be able to be Igbo and the Kano. I should be able to be Hausa and the Anambra. Sometimes we talk about northern Nigeria, and those people, Yoruba, they have lived in the north for close to five decades. Northerners, and today qualified to be northerners. How about those in the south? I know of a place called Bida in Onisha. If you are going to Bida at night, you go there, you think you are in the real Bida, or it's a complete option. People who learn. So they speak both languages fluently. Those houses do not have any trace in the north anymore. That is where they go. That's what they say. If you want to buy from them, they will tell you to come. Are they Southerners? Are they South? Any country that cannot resolve this issue cannot confront any of, especially the African. Let me also add this. The government is unable to fund basic requirements of the state, basic health care, of the school level. Amenities, we have to take loans to monitor it. No country in the world, no nation on earth is blessed with abundant human and natural resources. It's a fallacy. No. Nigeria is blessed to have those technologies. So every nation on earth seeks for extra sources of revenue, resources, and even human capital from outside its borders. But to achieve this, you have to first be united around a national agenda for development, so that as a Nigerian nation can compete with Ghana and but what you have right now is we are all hell bent on sharing the package. We are looking inward. And so the Batusian catching up with Nigeria faster than any other place because we have no other source of revenue than rent from crude oil. Because everybody has been brought down. And we are working to share this cake. And because the cake has been overshared down, it's put to the closer. And we fought our army and our police to defend them. Because we have eaten the cake to a level where we don't have enough to spare for government to meet up with basic. And so everything lies to resolve this all important question of who a Nigerian is. If you don't resolve that problem, and it takes a deliberate political process. It's happening in talk. I would like to use the Kamel Atatürk model as an example. Who was just when the debate in the world. Kamel Atatürk to make progress into the future. There has to be a talking network from the various ethnic groups that makes up the country. And he was fit about it. Himself was of Jewish ancestry. But he was able to part of the different groups in Turkey into a Turkish nation to the extent that today, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is of Georgian ancestry. These are how nation states are configured. Until we begin to look into this direction, no matter how you restructure, you can create more states, you can match states. If Igbos cannot live with Hausas in one country, the Inewi man and the Onisha man cannot live together in another country peacefully. The Anglican and the Catholic cannot live together peacefully. If Christians cannot live with Muslims and vice versa. And so we must resolve this issue. And like I said, it takes a deliberate political process. We have come to a point where it is no longer in our interest to continue along this path as a country. It's no longer in our interest. Those who think they are benefiting from this system are now at the receiving end, both as the people and as the people. So what is the way out? Sudan is staring us in the face. It was because Sudanese people could not live together in their indigenous nature, Arabs, Blacks, Christians, and Is South Sudan having peace today? Is Northern Sudan what they having peace? No, it's not. But if they couldn't live together as one Sudan, they don't live together today as South Sudan and Sudan. So we need a deliberate political process. It's in our own interest. And nobody can do it for us until we decide to do it. And I believe that for a forum like this is an opportunity for such community engagement to see if truly we can begin to reform our mindset. I believe so much in reforming our mindset towards achieving the desired goal. However, on the final note, I have a recommendation that I think can trigger this revolutionary mindset. It is my considered view today that the only form of instruction I would like to see, just one line item. If today we are able to amend the relevant section of the Constitution that either made us a feeding bottle federation, everybody comes to collect and have incentive. If you're able to amend and grant resource control to every part of the country, so that we have this free stopped. We need to stop this free money. If you stop it today, people will learn to respect each other and consider the talents you bring to bear in the state, even as outside, and what you bring to bear in Boronu, even as an German. But as long as you have monthly allocation, those who claim to be the owners of the land, no nation can make progress along this direction. It's not possible. Thank you very much. Again, look, it has to be a deliberate word, deliberate. It has to be a deliberate process. It has to start small. It can start from Abuja. You show about the world, there are centers of Abuja. It is not right to live in Abuja. You say that from State, but you live in Abuja. You work in it. I'm sure you rarely visit the personality. Yours is I've not been to Kogi in 8 months. I live in it. Because of this mentality that we all have, this indigenous concern about and how my environment is here. Now, it means that I pay taxes. I'm not interested in who I become. I'm not interested in how my security in Abuja is administered. I am not. I'm not a lot of people. Anything because I'm not here my home. Once I live off my life here, I will end up with a house in my village. I'll have to spend 2 million for lighting. Whatever I decide to do after 1 or 2 years. There's no country that will get it right. So it starts from we must make that decision collective and get a base on it. Not beginning to the party. It's something you must decide to do. The truth is you've not decided to do it. Some of us feel this system sometimes favors you, it's called connection. But when they don't favor you, call it marginalization. Because I hope that it will turn around so that we will now be connected one and he'll be the marginalized one. Until we realize that we are, because individually you are, I am, and that's what we are. You will not get out of this problem. So it's something that has to come from your mind. No amount of discussion, no amount of can get this out of your mind. You have to build this decision that henceforth you are a citizen and you to act and participate in politics like a citizen. You have to achieve the desired thing. Thank you very
much. Thank you very, very much. The Messrs. Jofor and we really appreciate the context in which the entire issue has been discussed. It is indeed an issue, a problem, facing us squarely. I would not take your time, But one thing that brings me joy, all that has been said, is that the discussion has been steered, directed towards finding solutions. However, my fear is that those who ought to be listening to us are not listening, are not participating. And if they had their way, they probably would have obtained an injunction against us that we should not discuss this topic. Because one way or the other, the status quo favors them.
Mm.
However, it is like a man who is cutting his nose to spite his face. I agree that everything that has been said, one way or the other, cannot be faulted. I would just look at 2 points. Starting from the unity of the metamorphosis of the violence and unity and the history. I just want to say that it's important. History of any problem, so as we know how to solve. I even go back from 1977, the discussions at the Willings Commission in the UK, when our own people went through their equivalent of the Berlin Conference for the distribution of Nigeria. Like I said, it was done on it, and that has led us to this point. How do we then achieve the change that we desire? Which he has I suggest that we must need to amend it and to have the right of an independent candidate entrenched in it. The day you do that, you dislodge the all power of the political party. Once a good man in the society, local government can come out, the people know him, the people will stand by him, they will floor anybody that has been sponsored, especially with our recent experience. So I think now is the time for us to get the return of independent candidates upon certain. I don't think because they join the proceed of being a loyal party member and they've already cornered space for themselves. Secondly, also, is that there is a need to decentralize the security architecture. I agree. I've always been, right from when I was president in the Nigerian Bar Station, advocate for a state and community police. But people thought I was crazy at that time. But it has staring us in the face that we cannot have 774 local governments and you do not have people to secure some of those places that are in the wilderness, places that those who do not mean well can hibernate, can hide, and carry out nefarious activities. So, and it's also a source of it because you have a local government structured at what level. There is nowhere that will not, and there will be people, of course, who are there in the community. In any event, not be a free for all. It should be something based on clearly defined rules of training and engagement. There must be standardization. And that's why I've always advocated for a national committee of state laws, which the committees of speakers or houses of assembly try to replicate. But in America, you have such national where each state has the same laws in different forms. but to achieve the same objective so that you don't move from Minnesota to California and you think that you are moved from UK to Germany. Still know that you of America. The educational curriculum, Hawaii, and the one you get in Europe. Well, here, in some places, history is taught. In some places, it is off the screen. We have to make, and I think the number one missed, but his defense is that he was fighting the civil war at that time. He had the best opportunity to forge the Nigeria. Because if you don't forge Nigeria, and I see us forging in Nigeria, if we can take all the children from Sokoto State to Cross River, take all the children from Cross River and bring them to Sokoto State until when they're about 14, 15, you return them. And one of the unifying factors is the national, or is the national youth service, which some people are calling for it. The day we do that, it's because a lot of us wouldn't have known a lot of the things that I went to where somebody came to Lagos, married a family, and cross fertilization at different has been going on as a result of that. So much so that one of the saving factors today is that if you want to break this country, then where will I send my wife? Where will I send this person? Where do you start? However, finally, is that we cannot succeed in solving this problem if we do not have government that is on the principle of equity, justice, and fairness. Leave out the rule of and the fear of once and the love of a fellow human. I don't think you love a fellow human if you see out of they give you say you want to share palliatives, they give you 67 million and you eat. And nobody sees you didn't buy a single thing. You call yourselves in the night, share this money, and send it. The next day, you're flying a private which belongs to your friend, but it's your own. What do you need that? Yet, children are dying in Nigerian hospitals due to Panadol, lack of basic uh, uh, medication. So, you would not have any proof. Never mind the fact, say, oh, all are given to one side. That is the fact. But how do you justify the fact that most employment started with 200,000? Now you need about 2.5 million, 3 million to get employed in civil service. And it is given to cartel. And people have come from that. You know, it's an investment. I say that is why you work in such a situation for 35 years. At the end of the day, you don't see your pension. Because you built your whole career on a lie. I said, better go and find hand, be a carpenter, be a electrician, be carefree, or fix electronics. But don't go and do Yahoo, I tell you. So, in a situation where the people think that, oh, it's ethnic marginalization, how do you account for the fact that people now pay those who are in the position have been given those jobs to employ others? Now sit down and collect money. You cannot doing it. They are there for security. Remember the man who had just employed, elected in the House of Reps, was being interviewed long time ago. That was because there was no political correctness then. So the man was being interviewed in House and he said, tell us why you decided to be honorable. He didn't say that he went there, when people said, Nash Siyasa, drank Chikapudi. That is, I am in politics and I've been elected to satisfy my own personal end. Live on TV. I mean, I just so you tell me that when such a person gets, he may use the fact that he's an ethnic champion to get there, but I can assure ethnicity, religion, and other factors are just a means to get at discussion about sharing stuff. So these factors are factors that human we are all so let's drive and look for the majority percent. When there are about 10 people left, the cake is looking. Then we now say, well, so let's drive this Pentecostal thing. Then we call them Pharisees. Go get out. So we are left, 6 of us. Then we look around, keep going about the time. Then we say, well, all those who are not in who are in St. Vincent de Paul. They are the only night. Or Sacred Heart of Jesus. Then you drive 3 people for 3 months. Then you are still looking that this big cake cannot go around. Then you now look how to drive. Say you are not married. Yeah. Now the then you remember that he broke like away long time ago. He has not restored. Get out. It was never sent the Muslims, sent the Pentecostal, then one reason or the other, he sent the Catholic God until he took the cake. That is what is happening in Nigeria. With all sorts of reasons, it's not about the religion. It's not about. It's about the food they want and the things they want to pocket. And when they pocket it, they find out too much to spend. That they are actually insane, lunatic, to be able to carry that kind of money that you don't know how to spend. That you may be able to take it. So you find out money very discussion. The leaders that just and that's why the judicial system is collapsed. Some of good judges find the majority more active than the Pope. They are like the politicians now refer to them as the judicial wing of their political party because there is nothing that the political party or the leader can do. And therefore, and they have no time for other cases of one contract, the other breach of contract, uh, somebody broke another person's window with farmland that has been taken over by the wrong person. They don't bother to listen to it. That doesn't bring money. What brings to them money? When party A, but there's intra-party dispute, and they bring the case, and they proceed, and everybody's happy. So we have a long way to go. That's the long way. And I thank you all for drawing attention to the problem and providing solutions. let us hope and pray. As Nigeria's problem requires a lot of prayers. And it also requires at least those who have the opportunity and the privilege of listening to this the contribution made will at least be able to distill what is sincere and what is not sincere, if any, from it. And let us go out and be good apostles of preaching one Nigeria. Because from what I've heard, there is no one here that appears to want the balkanization or disintegration of Nigeria. It's a very beautiful country. And it will be a pity if all the beautiful women here will go to their respective towns and villages and then leave people in a desert of. So we have more that connect us than what divides us. A few errant, miscreant, cattle rustlers, bandits cannot, in my view, said people then start thinking themselves. And the few places where people have started thinking themselves, the results have been different because nobody wants to die. So if a man, a thief, knows the meaning and he is going to meet fire, first of all, you have the protection of the walls. It's the one that a good bow and arrow can teach him if you know how to use it. Talk less of you having off. Indeed, it worked in the place. They were coming with AK-47. Bow and arrow didn't make mistakes. People find that three of the militia dropped them. The rest ran. It's jazz they were using. So we need to also be very proactive in our defense. We also need to alert government. One day is the people in the rural areas. These people are getting very audacious. They walk into state house, government house, and pick somebody whom they shouldn't pick when it gets to that point, whether by arrangement or whether by default. So just hope people will learn this. So finally, the Wari branch told me that they have something to present to the foundation. So if you have, we just take 2 minutes for that before I finally very effusively the mic.
First of all, I must appreciate the honor as the chairman of India Buhari branch. We are here, and I know that Paul Audi is one of us. Monday, is one of us. Some of the elders, especially the first chairman of Buhari branch, was away for the sent briefing. And so amongst the Buhari branch, we are very, very grateful because the history of Buhari branch cannot be complete without mentioning the oracle of law. And we call our own father, Joseph Bodrun WSL, our own father, and the great patron to the branch because the real hand that laid the golden egg that is now known as Buhari branch. We couldn't have had Buhari branch except while as president of Nigerian Bar Association. So on behalf of Nigerian Bar Association, sir, we have come to appreciate you. Not only appreciating your top-notch innovation in area of rule of law under the aegis of Rule of Law Development Foundation. That remain model, which a lot of people like. And you can see how many people who have really been with me have really been enriched. So, sir, without wasting much time, on behalf of Nigerian Bar Association, Nigerian Bar Association. And secondly, sir, as one of the editorial advisors of our volume number 2, volume 2 of the Capital Bar Journal, that we quite appreciate your input in making sure that this thing happens. That we quite appreciate it. We know that you will continue to support us because without you, actually, this Capital Bar Journal wouldn't have been there. We used to discuss join the common WhatsApp. As we are so delighted having you within us on the WhatsApp. And we are seeing that even at 1 a.m. we are making was seeing that this Capital Bar is a special edition dedicated to honorable honorable. So thank you, sir.
So finally, I would like a very proper sound of applause for the two presenters. Highly valued. We would need your final touches to make papers because at the end of the year we intend to do a publication of carry over webinars, which so that we can have whenever you maybe you have one or two more touches, you order it. So I'd like to have that. And then secondly, please water and one or two refreshments. So don't go in and I think that appears to be all. We have said the next one, God sparing our lives, will be on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. There are new innovations, increase of polling stations, and the vexed question of electronic vote. You know, a lot of people have not seen it. So the foundation will place on its website the draft bill so that people can go through it and then we can assemble here for the April webinar, deal with the issue. We must begin to take our destinies in our hands and not leave it in the hands of the National Assembly, where these things can be done in a cloak and dagger manner. We are presented with what will take us to another 4 years of harrowing suffering. So with that, Paul, is there any other housekeeping? With that, thank you all for coming. And thank all those who are appearing on the web. It's a pity. We cannot provide virtual refreshments. So if you can have a glass of water on our behalf. Well, thank you for participating. And we hope that more and more people will be able to join us. And a lot of people have joined us from the platforms, not only the Zoom, but Facebook and YouTube. And a lot of comments have been very, very, very encouraging. So we thank you very much. We wish you all the best. Thank you, Mr. Jofo. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody on the internet. Please have a nice day.